Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Wolf. I'm the programming coordinator for the Osterville Village Library. And it is with great pleasure and warmth that we welcome Darius Coombs to the Osterville Village Library today. And thank you to those joining us on Zoom, by the way. His roots run deep as a citizen of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, where he serves with passion as the Cultural Outreach Coordinator for the Education Department. Darius brings to us a wealth of experience from his impressive tenure of over 30 years as the former director of the Wampanoag Indigenous program at the esteemed Plymouth Patuxet Museum. His work has garnered national attention, collaborating with notable organizations such as the Smithsonian, the History Channel, National Geographic, and Scholastic. Renowned for his expertise in the teaching of Wampanoag and other Indigenous cultures and their significant roles in history of the Northeast, Darius has been honored with the 2016 New England Museum Association Award for Excellence and the 2021 Bay State Legacy Award. Please join us in extending a warm welcome to Darius Coombs as we look forward to an enlightening and inspiring presentation, 13 Moons. Did I do it? Yes.
Yeah. Well, Tapatash Amy for that nice introduction here at the Osterville Village Library. And I thank you folks for coming out today. I woke up and looked outside at my window. I saw it snowing. I'm like, oh, geez. I want to skip you till it's on Zoom today, you know. Thank you for trekking out today in this weather. Yeah, like Amy was saying, I've been doing this for a long time, and I enjoy what I do. I speak on true history. I don't really beat around the bush. I try to tell the true facts, the good, bad, and the ugly, as they say, you know, about our history, which there's a lot of. So my presentation is called 13 Moons. And what 13 moons for us means is a full cycle, a full year cycle. There's 13 moons in 1 year, right? So you're gonna hear what was normal for our people. You're gonna hear interruption. You guys got your seatbelts on right now? Seriously, you're gonna go through an emotional roller coaster right now. So I speak for close to about an hour. This presentation goes on, and I will take questions on Zoom or from the audience here afterwards, guys. You're gonna hear, like I said, the true history of our people in bits and pieces, and hopefully you guys will do your own research too as you see these topics pull up. So let's get going on this, huh? Not yet. Hold on. And I'd like to thank my Indigenous folks in the back there for coming out too on this day. The communities of Mashpee and also Heron Pond by the canal. Thank you folks in support. So what we got here is our people, my people have been here for over 12,000 years, and we're still here today thriving, right? And Wampanoag is one nation going across what is called the United States today. There's over 570 odd nations, right? Going across the states, what they call the states today. And Wampanoag is around the Massachusetts and Rhode Island area, going right near Boston, going all throughout Cape Cod, and going out to central Massachusetts. What makes us similar amongst our people is how we think about life. I'm not just talking about human life. I'm talking about animal life, plant life, fish life. We don't put ourselves above, below anything like that, you know? We're all considered to be equal, okay? Where I stand is who we are as a people. There is no difference. And that's how we think about Mother Earth, our creator. We all work together, right? Other things that makes us similar is some languages are similar. The diets are different though. Wampanoag is part of the Algonquin speaking language, which a lot of people spoke. But the farther away you gotta go, the less you're gonna understand each other, right? But the biggest thing amongst our nations is how we think about life in general across the country, right? We're all considered to be same. I visited a lot of indigenous nations going across throughout North America. And Native people are very hospitable, right? Hospitable. I'll walk into a person's house and they'll offer food and drink right away and welcome you like you're at home. That's a big thing for our people. Wampanoag, like I said, around this area, there's over 70 Wampanoag communities around Massachusetts and Rhode Island, right? 70. I'll name off some of these communities. You got Mashpee, right? You got Katuitt, you got Comaquid, you got Mishon, you got Aquina, you got Chappaquiddick, you got Nantucket, you got Patuxet, you got Seekonk, you got Pocasset. Those 70 odd communities, right, all speak the same language, but they're more or less like small towns. Each community have their own leader and their own council at one time, okay? If you had to make a major decision of a battle, you might gather these nations together, these communities together, and make that decision. At one time for Wampanoag people, we numbered over 100,000 people. Like I said, going through near Boston, past Boston, Western Mass, parts of Rhode Island, and all throughout Cape Cod. Over 100,000, right? Today in 2024, I don't know, 15, 20,000, say. What happened to us all? We're gonna get into that, right? What happened to the 80,000? Why did the numbers decrease? But we're still here today. We're a very proud people. I'd like to welcome another Wampanoag person. I guess we'll saw walk in there. How you doing, cousin? All right. So let's start out, right? Let's start out before interruption happened, right? Let's call it a year, I don't know. Let's call it 50, I don't know, let's say 1424, right? We'll use the year 1424 and what was normal for our people and how we lived. So for us as a people, during the fall and winter, we come out near, I should say during the spring and summer, we come out near the ocean, the rivers. And during the fall and winter, we go inland. So when we come out during the spring and summer near the ocean and rivers in our family groups, we celebrate New Year's. New Year's for a lot of people is January 1st. For our people, New Year's is when everything comes to life. You think about that. When does everything come to life? In the springtime, right? So we celebrate New Year's a lot of time during May. We give thanks to Mother Earth. We give thanks to the Creator for us being here, having that extra day. That's not always guaranteed. You know that, right? We give thanks for our family. We're a very sociable people. We like to tell stories. We joke around quite a bit. Right, Troy? So, like, we give thanks back for being here, like I said. And once we do that, during springtime, we know we have to get to work. We have to do something, right? We gotta go get food and such. But this is the type of house we live in and what was normal before interruption during spring and summer. This is a cattail covered house. And cattail is a type of water plant, right? We harvest it in October, September. We cut it down, split it, dry it. Then we sew them into mats like you see there. That's a house, a single family house, which holds about probably 6 to 8 people. And that's about 14 foot around. And a lot of people say 6 to 8 people live in that house. You got to think how we live. It's different from people live today. You think about how people live today, how we live is a lot of times everything's done inside, right? People cook, people bathe, people eat inside. Most of our life is spent outside. For me, being inside is unusual. I'd rather be outside right now speaking. But so you didn't need a large house, right? But the house do get warm. The best way I can compare how we live during the spring and summer, if you guys know how the Midwest is, right? You drive down the road in the Midwest, you see a farmhouse, then you see fields. Drive a little further, another farmhouse and more fields. If you're going in a canoe along the river, that's what you would have seen, okay? Samuel Champlain back in 1605 drew a map when he came into Plymouth, Patuxet, right? And what he saw. He saw a house like this and cornfields all around it. Another house of more cornfields. That's a very famous map, 1605 map. So these are the houses we live in, right? So corn, beans, and squash. Yeah, A lot of people think, okay, Native people eat a lot of fish and meat, which we do. But for us as Wampanoag people, probably over 60% of what we ate and still eat today is considered to be vegetables. I do a lot of presentations for adults and kids. I tell kids, you guys like vegetables? Like, yeah. So you like corn? Yeah. You like beans? You like squash? No. And you got watermelon, you got pumpkins, you got sunflowers, you got Jerusalem artichokes. Now, for us, like I said, if 60% of your diet was vegetables, we did a lot of planting, right? You need a lot of ground for planting. That's why you live in family groups during the spring and summer. Now, when do you plant corn? You can't say, okay, it's May 5th, now we plant corn. You have to wait for different signs of nature to happen. You have to wait till the shadbush start to bloom. You have to wait until the oak leaf becomes big as a squirrel's ear, right? You have to wait until the herrings start to run. And when you see these signs in nature, that's when you wait until the next new moon. And the reason you wait until the new moon, what the new moon does is draw gravity up. So it helps that corn seed grow. Yeah. So once that corn comes up, it pulls nitrogen out of the ground. You plant your beans right next to it, and the beans will wrap right around the pole of the corn and feed nitrogen back into the ground. Plant your squashes on the bottom, and they shade the ground to keep the ground soft. Now, whose responsibility was to do this are the givers of life. Who gives life? The woman, right? So the woman gives life to Mother Earth. So their responsibility is to take care of that planting field, okay? That's where you have year round, you dry them out and have them for the winter. Other people's responsibility during the spring and summer, these guys didn't do much of anything. They were encouraged to play a lot. The kids, right? They would listen, I shouldn't say anything. They were there to listen, learn from the elders, from the parents, from the grandparents, from the uncles, from the aunts, until they got older. Older is not a number, right? Today we go by numbers. Older is maturity levels. You can go through 5, 6, 7 different maturity levels through a life. As you change as a person, your names will change also as a person. You don't take these names on yourself. We have medicine people in our community still today who see changes in you. And once they see changes in you, you'll be given a different name, depending on how you are. Now, these are my 2 youngest daughters here, right? The one picking the sumac berries, staghorn sumac, her name is Tashima. And what Tashima means in Wampanoag is one who lifts up. It's not because Tashima is big and strong, but Tashima wakes up in a good mood almost every single day. And when she wakes up in a good mood, everybody feels good, right? The little one down there is Storm. I don't need to say anything more than that. That one keeps you on your toes, keeps you alert. But they would help out, help their moms out in the fields, help the boys, help their dads out fishing during the spring and summer. But their main responsibility is listen and learn until they get older. And like what Tashma was picking as a sumac berry, right? We drink a lot of teas. Staghorn sumac tea has 3 times as much vitamin C as orange juice does. You guys can order that. There's a lot of staghorn sumac on Cape Cod. You might have it in your backyard. Don't get mixed up with the poison sumac though. The poison sumac has a white flower. Staghorn sumac is red, okay? Yeah, this is a picture you guys probably how they promoted this program. Library here. That's my wife, Tootie. I asked her to come with me today. She said no. She was watching my grandchild. She goes, I've heard you speak dry. So, and that's myself. And for the men, we did a lot of fishing. You might see the women do shell fishing, mussels, clams, quahogs, oysters. The men did a lot of ocean going fishing in rivers and ponds. You think about everything, you guys know Cape Cod, you live down here, you know what's out in these waters. And everything out in the waters, we had 10 times as much back then. A lot of bluefish, a lot of codfish, a lot of stripers. You had sunfish, you had trout, you had pickerel, you had a perch, turtles, snapping turtles, sun turtles. Any idea what the biggest fish we would go for? Herring? Somebody say herring? No. I'll give you a hint. Begins with S. No, not salmon. I'll give you another hint. They go in rivers and ocean, they go back and forth. We had salmon, but no. I'll give you one last hint, all right? This fish no longer exists around here anymore. A lot of people like their eggs, they call it caviar. Sturgeon. Sturgeon are the biggest fish we went for, right? They're growing in population in Maine, Connecticut. You can find a lot in the Great Lakes. Sturgeon are considered to be bottom feeders. For us, we go out in our canoes with what we call Mashpee. Mashpee is plural, meaning more than one. We go out at night. We have pine pitch torches on the end of our boats, right? And because of the light of the torch, the fish would be the sturgeon would be attracted to the water level, and they'll flip over on their belly, and we will spear them. The tip of the spear of the harpoon go inside the fish, then we would drag the fish inshore, okay? But most of the time, the fish got bigger than the boat, so you couldn't put the fish inside the boat, right? And think of our boats, we had very big boats though, right? Our Mashpee, our dugout burnt out boats made from white pine logs and oaks and cherries, not cherry, but chestnuts. The smallest one we would have would be a 9-footer, one person, right? The biggest one we would have would probably be about 60 foot long, 6 foot wide, would hold 40 men or so. I tell folks, don't think about right now, put yourself back in time. We had trees over 150 foot in height, over 6 foot wide. So what's not unusual seeing a 30 or 40 man boat being sailed out to Nantucket Island. We have 3 different recordings of Europeans saying our boats being sailed out to Nantucket. You can paddle, you can pull along the shore, but sailing was, why not? Put up a mat and go with the wind, okay? And that's how you got around. Either you walked, you ran, or you use your boats for transportation, your Mashpee. A lot of people say, hey, what about the horses? I see Native people riding horses on TV. Yeah, they do. You're right. But that's during the 1800s. By that time, horses were everywhere in North America. Horses weren't seen in Massachusetts. They're not indigenous. They were thousands of years ago, but they went extinct. They were first reintroduced by the English. It was probably late 1640s, early 1650s. And they were first seen up in Mass Bay. If you guys know what Mass Bay is, that's Boston. And that's when everybody started using horses, a lot of folks. So your Mashpee was the main use of transportation, diplomacy, visiting people, fishing. That's how you got around. We even went to Martha's Vineyard Island. I made a trip over 20 years ago in those boats. Yeah. Want to answer that story real quick? I'll tell you, it's a really good story. You can see the video, right? It's called Mashpee, M-I-S-H-O-O-N, Trip to the Vineyard. We had a 30-foot boat, we had a 20-foot boat. We had 10 indigenous people come with us. 7 on the 30-footer, those 3 on the 20-footer. This trip hasn't been done in over 200 years in these boats. We're excited about doing it. We left a place called Nopska Point down in Woods Hole, okay? We left to peak at high tide. We had 10-mile-an-hour winds to our back. The waters that day were 0.2 knots. If you know 0.2 knots is, that's like pond water. It was nothing, right? There was nobody living to tell us this is how long it's gonna take to paddle Mashpee over to Tisbury. The most experienced paddlers, including myself, were saying it's gonna take us about 3 hours to do. We left Nopska. We ended up over Tashmoo Beach over Tisbury. We landed. And I remember, because I was steering one of the boats, right? I remember coming in, I'm like, where's everybody? The people saw us leave Nopska, says they're gonna have a big old party, singing and dancing, they're gonna have a clam bake there. They weren't there. So I'm like, how long is this taking us? Might be too long, you know? And we landed, any idea how long it took us? Hour and a half. We cut the time in half, right? Put it this way. People who saw us leave Nopska Point had to take a shuttle to the ferry, take the ferry over, and take another shuttle to Tashmoo Beach. And we had beaten them there by a half hour. So the only people who saw us leave and land on Tashmoo Beach was 8 sunbathers from Nebraska. This is August 18th of 2002. So we're dressed like I would dress what you see in the slide, right? So we're paddling in, right? And they're just standing up and looking at us like, the first thing out of their mouth was, you guys do this every day? I said, we haven't done this over 200 years. And I remember the native folks who came over the dunes after, and they were shocked to see us being there so quick. And we're trying to do that trip again. We just missed the 20th year anniversary, but we're trying to do that once again. Miss Marlene, you're there.
David has gone over, and let me have the coast guard blow the horn, the guy, because the other ships would not come into place.
Yeah.
We got that out over about 10 feet, when we taking pictures, we couldn't see you.
Yeah, it was dense fog. And it was really, we had trained for this, right? We had tougher practices, but with those ferries were coming back and forth, and we know what to expect, those large rolling waves coming in. And we saw those waves coming in toward us, and you don't take those waves on straight on or horizontally, you take them at a 45-degree angle, and we rolled right over those waves. And it was nice how everything broke once we get the attachment, the sun came out, and we landed. So we had a huge celebration. Check it out. It's a video called Mashpee Video to the Vineyard. Yeah. So going back to the slide, that's how we kind of lived during the spring and summer. We gather our vegetables, we fish, kids listen, learn from the elders. The elders, we have a lot of respect for, right? They've been there, done that. They got the wisdom. They got the knowledge. They're considered to be the teachers, still are today. We teach our kids that. We have to. They got to know this, right? So during the fall and winter, we move in homes like you see here, bark covered houses. Normally a bark covered, we move into a community too, and that's when you see your Patuxis, your Mashpees, your Cotuist, your communities, right? Which would hold anywhere from 300 people to up to 3,000 people. And those bark covered houses, on average, they'll be about 100, 150 foot in length. Might hold 10 families on the inside. We found a footprint of one of the biggest houses, right? It was found out in Worcester. This native house was 320 foot long, 60 foot in width. If you're not that good at math, they go to a football field. That gives you a rough idea how big this house was. Was it a house? Was it a community center? I don't know. Because where that house is stationed right around Worcester, Grafton, is right where the border of the Nipmuc start and we end. So that may have been a Gathering Nations type of house. But still, huge house. How do we get bark off the tree? We did it during a certain time of year, springtime, right? And that's when the blood of the tree runs. Sap of the tree goes up the tree, separates the wood from the bark, cut around the bottom, cut around top, slice down the middle, and peel the bark right off the tree. Right? It's like peeling a banana. You have maybe about a month gap to get that bark. If you miss that month, you gotta wait till next season, the cycle coming around. It's not like Home Depot. You can't run out and buy tree bark, right? And we do this all the time ourselves. We have traditional houses on our lands. I'll tell you how the inside works in a minute. But they're basically big shingles, right? And what we do during the fall and winter, we do a lot of hunting, right? We still hunt today. That's one thing that's not been interrupted in our culture. That's been continued. We have known hunters. And the 4 biggest animals that would go for back then were moose, elk, deer, black bear. We go for birds like turkeys, like what Tim is plucking, goose, partridge, quail, small animals like rabbit, beavers, otters, raccoons. Still today, you guys like the taste of skunk? Anybody?
It's like chicken.
Yeah, we know you haven't. You took my punchline, thank you. The skunk is a Wampanoag delicacy. A lot of elders still like the taste of skunk, and we still hunt for it today. There's only a certain way you hunt for skunk, right?
Yeah.
Very carefully, right? Now what you do, right? You get 2 boys. Normally it's considered the boys, young boys' responsibility to go out and get the skunk. One boy will be in front of the skunk distracting and waving at him, right? You get the other boy that'll sneak upon him from behind and grab his tail and lift him off the ground. In order for a skunk to spray, he has to be on all fours, putting pressure on his hind legs to release the stink glands. You get him up in there, he can't do that. And that's when you bang him on the head.
Yeah.
Very carefully cut him open, right? Take those stink glands out. Now, what I've heard, Miss Marlene, maybe you know, or Miss Hazel, I've heard elders say that you can take those stink glands, and that's good for arthritis. Rub it into your arthritis, yeah. It might smell a little bit, it works really well. Going back to fishing real quick, I forgot to mention. I mentioned shell fishing, right? Which is a big deal today on Cape Cod. Lobster, a big deal. For us, we went for lobster, but we have so much lobster, we can go down the beach at low tide and pick lobster off the beach. Lobster for us as people is considered to be fishing bait. We ate lobster, but it's not considered to be a big deal. You know, go back 100 years ago, lobster was fed to prisoners in jail every single day. And the prisoners had a big uprising. They said, no more, please. So the state of Massachusetts made a law that you only can feed lobster to prisoners twice a week. If you did it any more than that, it's considered to be inhumane. Like I said, I visited a lot of indigenous nations, right? I got a lot of friends up in New Brunswick from the Mi'kmaq Nation. You think of a cookout, right? You think of hot dogs, hamburgers, chicken. Their cookouts are straight lobsters. Literally, you can have as much as you want. They live around the ocean and there's lobster. It's still like that up there. That's pretty amazing. So hunting was a big thing for us. It still is today. Bow and arrow. We use different things for hunting today. Snares. I'll tell you a funny story about a snare, right? If you don't know what a snare is, it's a young tree bent over with a trigger system hooked up with a rope, and the animal will come across, maybe the deer, and step on that trigger and be launched up in the air. The rope will go around his leg. When the colonists arrived, right, their future governor-to-be, not governor yet, William Bradford, he was searching out the area on Cape Cod. And guess what he stepped on, right? He stepped on a deer stand and got flung up in the air. That's a true story. And his men found him hanging by one leg in the middle of the woods. So people say, did he die? No, I said future governor-to-be, so he didn't die. But the rest of his life, he complained about how sore his hip was. And when I used to work at Plymouth, right, there was a pilgrim village up there. I knew who was playing the governor, right? And they're on character. We're on third person. So I used to send the school groups up there. I go ask William Bradford, the governor, how his hip's doing today. And Doug used to come down, Darius, all these kids asking about my hip. That's all I got to. Eventually, you must be walking funny then. So. Weaving, woman done by the woman. Can be done year round, a lot during the fall and winter. We have some well-known weavers back there still today that has not been interrupted. We made string, and you'd be fascinated by when I tell people we had string. You guys had string? Oh, yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. We made string. We made string from different types of plant fibers. We use milkweed, we use dogbane, we use false nettle, we use the inner bark of a basswood tree. We take those fibers out, we work them together on our leg, and that's how we get our string. When the colonists first arrived, they wrote down the Wampanoag woman was making string so fast on their legs that their eyes couldn't keep up with. And we dyed it with different types of berries, you know, and roots from the ground. You can use sumac, you can use a pokeberry to get the different colors. And our weaving is so well known that it's actually down in the Smithsonian, down in Washington, D.C., at the National Museum of American Indian. We have Miss Marlene back there as a famous weaver. We have Linda Coombs. We have our Comey wild horses. So that tradition has not been interrupted. That part of our culture is still going on today. Belts, bags. This is inside of our WeQ house, a bark covered house. That's Tashman and Storm there with their older sister, Talir. That's my oldest daughter. And they made that tea. They actually made that tea that day, sumac tea, and they're drinking it. And that house right there, our bark covered houses during the winter will get to be 70, 80 degrees. It'll get as warm as we want them to get, right? Rule of thumb, when you're making these houses, every 10 foot, you add a fire pit. That's for light, warmth, and for cooking, right? You can see the shape of it. The heat will go up, and we have mats on the walls. The heat will go down underneath the mats, force colder out to the fire, and that keeps the warming going around in circles. When the Europeans first got here, they wrote down, Wampanoag houses got to be so warm that they saw little kids running outside naked during the winter and jumping into the snow. Yeah, they knew this, right? And these houses right here, the dome shaped, and they're wind resistant, right? We haven't had a major hurricane up here in a number of years. But you guys, if you lived here for a number of years, you remember 91, right? Hurricane Bob. Yeah, I was in this house, one of these houses when that hurricane hit. You don't see any corners on the house. So the winds can't not get trapped. The wind will go right around. And that's what happened. The wind went right around the houses. I was watching the Weather Channel one day, right? And they got those heavy duty trucks down, and they were down the Keys, riding around the major hurricane down there. All these houses they were seeing literally being taken down right in front of their face. They saw one house that was not taken down. It was a dome-shaped house. And they got scared. The Weather Channel got scared. They went up there, knocked on the door, and the guy let him in. He was an architect. He built himself a dome-shaped home for a reason, because the Keys get a lot of hurricanes. And that's the only house that stood up. So that in a nutshell is how we lived, right? That was considered to be normal for our people. And that's how we lived year after 13 moon, after 13 moon, after 13 moon for a number of thousands of years, right? Until interruption happened, right? And which it did. So we fast forward to the year I mentioned all the way up to, let's say, 1614, right? The Pilgrims weren't the first people here in 1620. We had people coming over here for at least 100 years prior. We had the Dutch, we had the English, we had the French. Now, I've heard terms, right, put on these people. These are fishermen, these are explorers, these are traders. If you're gonna say that, we got to add on as enslavers, because that's a fact. You got to say that in one breath, right? And that's true. This is what they wrote down themselves. Now, I'm not saying all of them did, but a lot did. What they wanted for trade for us is they wanted a lot of our beaver skins, otter skins to make their hats over Europe. And what we wanted would have been steel, brass, glass, different types of metals. So when they landed in 1614, well, one of the people, you guys heard of John Smith? Yeah, he mapped out New England in 1614. When John Smith left, right, he left his fishing captain behind, and that was Thomas Hunt. And Thomas Hunt landed what is known as Patuxet by people, is what is called Plymouth today. And when he landed, when he went to Patuxet, he took 19 Patuxet as slaves. Now, from here on, guys, I want you to remember a lot of dates. I'm going to throw a lot of dates at you. I'm going to go back and forth. It's got all tied together. So 1614, Thomas Hunt takes 19 Patuxet as slaves. Squanto, the famous Squanto being one of them, right? Known as Squantum, known as Squanto today. Goes on Cape Cod, goes farther down, lands on Nauset, what we call Eastham today, and took 8 Nauset as slaves. Okay? So they say about 27 people were taken. They were brought to Spain. A lot was sold to Spain, but the remainder was sold to England, over to London. Squanto was sold to a merchant named John Slaney in 1614. And Squanto lived in England from 1614 to 1619, 5 years, right? He was considered to be an indentured servant. He was showcased, pranced around. But the main idea that we were taking is, let's teach these people how to speak our language, being English, then we'll bring them back as guides and interpreters. On the most part, we never made it back because we had no built-up immunity to what other people had. The smallest thing for some people were the biggest of the others when we died. Squanto did not. He did live there 5 years. Now, I mentioned those years, 1614 through 1619. Now, when he was gone, the most devastating thing that happened to our people happened, period. It was disease that hit around here. From 1616 through 1619, there was a major plague epidemic that people's skin turned yellow. Once people got it, they had open sores on their bodies, and they died within 2 or 3 days from Wampanoag people. And, you know, this plague starts in northern Maine. It sweeps along the coastline, goes about 30 miles inland, goes through our country, Wampanoag country, and ends up by Narragansett Bay, Rhode Island. it stopped there. For our people, wiped out up to 90% of our people. They say anywhere from 70 to 90% of Wampanoag people are wiped out. And that's where you get that decrease right there from 100,000 and so numbers. Why did it stop in Narragansett Bay? Why not go through Florida? Why not, There's two guesses I have myself, is down there you got the Narragansetts, and the Narragansetts are our nation still today of people. And then we weren't getting along that well. They didn't say what was going on, but they didn't like us, we didn't like them. Might have been a family aversion, we don't know. But if you don't like a people, you stay away from that people, and you can't pass that disease on. But also you got Narragansett Bay down there, and it's hard for disease to go over water. That's why you see a lot of like Nantucket, the vineyard today that weren't affected by the plague a whole lot because they're out in the ocean. Nantucket was heavily populated with Native people, Wampanoag people, all the way through the 1700s, right? I'm gonna go fast forward a little bit. And what happened in 1763 over Nantucket, it was a so-called vaccine against smallpox given to Native people. And 2/3 of the Wampanoag population of Nantucket died from that vaccine. So-called vaccine, yes. So yeah, and this is, like we've been doing this for a year as historians, right? And what we have, right, is a big puzzle. And we got these pieces, right? We try to fit the puzzle together the best we can. But I can't fathom today the leaders we lost, the chiefs, the medicine people, the council, the traditional political structure, how everything was set up. We do the best we can. We have a lot of oral history. But to fully understand, in my opinion, you have to go back before disease hit to see how everything was set up. Now, you guys know what this is, right? The Mayflower. They first landed on Cape Cod, 1620. They landed right a year after the plague ended. It was fortunate for them. They got blown off course, landed on Cape Cod, scouting out the land, thinking about staying. It was, you hear a lot of these primary sources. You guys might have heard of Morse Relations. That's the first primary source the English wrote when they got here. It says the English were walking into the woods following Native people with their mastiffs, the dogs. That's weird to me, my way of thinking. Why would you don't know the people, but you gotta chase them in the woods or follow them in the woods with your dogs? When they were scouting out the land for water and see it was all right to live, they came across Native people's burials. They say there was two parties of people, right? One party of people, English guys, went out and found these burials and turned them over, but realized it was a burial, covered them back up. The other party of men went, opened up the burials, and took from the burials. They found corn, which is Corn Hill on Cape Cod today, which they took. And that's when the first encounter broke out. You guys live on Cape, most probably live on Cape Cod here. You guys know Eastham. You might have probably been the first encounter beach, right? And that's the first, I don't even want to call it a battle, fight between the two people happened. When they got in the first encounter, the north, which was Nauset area, right? Remember what I said about the Nauset earlier? Flashback to Thomas Hunt in 1614. He took 8 Nauset as slaves. So the leader down there, his name was Aspinet. He was probably thinking, why did this fight break out? There's 3 reasons: the burials being disturbed, Corn Hill, corn being taken, or the Native people being taken as slaves. And Aspinet might have been thinking that this ain't gonna happen to us again. Musket balls were shut off, arrows were shut off. Nobody died, but English were forced out, and that's when they landed in what's called Plymouth today, what we call Patuxent. And it was fortunate for them when they landed. That area was, people say the word abandoned. It wasn't abandoned. People died. Abandoned is like voluntary leaving, in my opinion. People died from plague. And for us as Native people, we're a very given people still today. And for us, we believe if nobody lives there, go ahead and settle there. And these people, once history started happening right there, brought their women and children. Some signs when you bring women and children might have meant a friendlier type of people than the explorers, fishermen, traders, and slavers. So when they landed in December 1620, they were building their homes. And those very deadly months, January, February, a lot of them died. Half of them died between coming over in those few months of winter. They said they saw different sightings of Native people. If you know Plymouth, you know Clark's Island, a little island outside of Plymouth Harbor, 3 miles out. They saw Native people out there. They saw Native people on a hill. They said they saw 2 Native people, and the English said something to them on the hill. Native people said something to them, and they waved at each other. Come here, you come here. Neither party went to each other, right? But they heard other Native voices down the hill, so there were more Native people there. And they also saw Native people walk through the woods, okay? So I'm gonna flash back again, right? I'm gonna leave you right now in March of 1620. I'm gonna flash back to say 1619. When this is going on, plague was just about ending. There was a very wealthy merchant named Sir Fernando Gorges over London, who was funding a lot of these trips over. And he was asking, well, who's from Plymouth, Pawtuxet? They said, well, Squanto is to Squantum, but he's over. Right now, he's in Newfoundland with Captain Mason. Well, pick him up. I want to make another expedition down to Plymouth, Pawtuxet. So he hired on Thomas Dermer, and they picked up Squanto up in Newfoundland, went down the coastline in 1619, right? Imagine what was going through Squanto's mind at that time, seeing that devastation of plague, people, all dead bodies everywhere. That's what they saw, bones and such. They stopped in a place called Mohegan Island in Maine, and they picked up a Sagamore, a leader, a chief, his name being Samoset. Samoset knew a lot of English captains, could speak English. If he went on that boat with Dermer voluntarily or non-voluntarily, we don't know, but we know he was on that boat. They went down the coast, went through Pawtuxet and saw Wampanoag, and that was Squanto's homeland. And Squanto was devastated by seeing all this land, all the people being dead, right? They stopped over Capawack, known as the Vineyard today. Another flashback, guys. And that's when their ship was attacked in 1619, Dermer's ship. And Squanto and Samoset had the chance to jump over from the shore. The Native people on the island attacked that ship. Now, why was that ship, Dermer's ship, attacked? 1614 again, I think his name was Captain Hobson, took a leader from Martha's Vineyard. His name was Epinow, and brought him and a few other Native people over London. That was 1611, I should say, 1611. In 1613, when he was over England, what was it for, 1614, Gorges was asking Epinow, is there gold where you're at? And Epinow's like, yeah, you bring me back home, I'll show you where all the gold's at. There's no gold over Martha's Vineyard. But they brought him and his other friends back home. And when they brought him back home, Epinow called out to his men attacked the ship, and they got a chance to swim over. So 1619, fast forward, because this ain't gonna happen again. Attack Dermer's ship. Dermer gets injured quite badly. Squanto, Samoset got the chance to jump over. It gets kind of grayish there, right? We think Samoset and Squanto went to go live in Massasoit's community, a Pokanoket. If you guys know what Bristol, Rhode Island is, that's what Pokanoket is. As far as we know today, that was the biggest Wampanoag community at the time. We think it had over 3,000 or 4,000 people. It was very, very large. And Squanto could speak English from being over England. Samoset could speak English. So back to March of 1620. Massasoit's trying to figure out what these people were doing here, right? These colonists. We were used to people coming over. The only thing we weren't used to is people coming over and staying. And that's what they were doing. So from my learnings over the years, Massasoit was probably thinking in his head, Samoset, come here. For one, he's probably thinking, yeah, he's not one of my men, but he can speak English. Why don't you go into Pawtuxet and find out what these people are doing, right? So Samoset walked into the Pilgrim Village of 1620 in March and greeted them by using the English words. And they were shocked at seeing a savage could do that, right? They sat him down, they gave him something to eat and drink. He stayed overnight, which I thought was kind of weird, first meeting these people. He stayed in Stephen Hopkins' house. Why Stephen Hopkins? I didn't know that for a number of years, and I asked an English scholar, what do you think Stephen Hopkins? Well, he goes, Darius, Stephen Hopkins was the only person ever dealt with indigenous people before. He's down in Jamestown. He made the trip over with the colonists. I didn't realize that. So he probably felt comfortable dealing with these Samoset. Next day, Samoset wakes up, says, you know what? I'm not from here. I'm gonna bring you a leader who is. And that's when they formed that very famous treaty between the two people. What the treaty was all about, basically, is if you go to war, I'll help you out. If I go to war, you help me out. There are other bits and pieces, but that was the main staple of that treaty. Why they needed an ally, how you really felt to the English being here, depending on how you were treated by the explorers, traders, fishermen, slavers prior. If your brother got taken as a slave, you're not going to be open arms for other people being here. And a lot of people did not like what Massasoit was doing. We know Combatant, the leader of Manapoisa, did not like what he's doing. We know Canonicus, the leader of the Narragansetts, did not like what he was doing, making this treaty with the English. Why we needed a treaty is because the Narragansetts were encroaching. We were less in numbers. And there was only 50 colonists, mind you, right? But the colonists also had the musket. And Canonicus on Narragansett country might have been thinking, if Massasoit's making a treaty with one boat, he might be making a treaty with all these boats coming back and forth. So that treaty lasted over 50 years without major war between the two people. There was things happening all around, but major war around here, no. But I can tell you, relations declined. I'll talk about that a little later.
What decline?
Relations between the two people, relations. Okay. Oh, wow, Thanksgiving. You guys heard about this, right? So Squanto taught him how to plant corn. We heard that story, right? Squanto lives amongst the English. And that very first feast between the two people happens late September, early October. It did not happen on what, third, fourth Thursday in November? No. Late September, early October, that's when harvest time is. And we know Massasoit comes, we know he shows up, we know he brings 90 men with him. Imagine coming to somebody's dinner bringing 90 men. But he also gifts the English with about 5 deer. They never ever mentioned turkey being at that feast. They mentioned fowl being there, turkey. I mean, they mentioned deer, but fowl could have been goose, duck, partridge, quail, could have been turkey. It goes on for 3 days. In my opinion, it's the first act of diplomacy between the two people. So it only happened 1 year. It was a harvest feast, wasn't called a Thanksgiving. I'm gonna flash back real quick about that plague again. I didn't mention, which is very important, guys, about that plague. What has to be mentioned. Like I was saying, it was the most devastating thing that ever happened to our people, and people put labels on it, names on it, right? I've heard hepatitis, I've heard yellow fever. I've heard disease control coming out, calling it leptospirosis. And that was from French trade ships coming up northern Maine, Canada. And on those ships, they would have rats, and the rats would get off these ships, and the fetus of the rats would get into the water level, create an infectious liver disease. But no matter what you want to call it, doesn't matter to me. It was the most devastating thing that happened on our homeland for our people. If it wasn't because of this guy, history would have been different today. Massasoit's community, being Bristol, Rhode Island, was 40 miles west of Plymouth, right? Okanoket, away from Pawtucket. So Massasoit needed an ambassador, a liaison, to live amongst the English. And that's when he sent Hoppemuck. Hoppemuck could speak English. He lived amongst the English with his family of over 10, anywhere from 1621, the summer, till early 1630s. He was the closest native the English would consider to be a friend, okay? He was welcome to go in the village anytime he wanted to. Actually, later on, there's records of him living with Miles Standish in Duxbury. But he kept peace between the two people. It was considered to be a pinnace. If you know what a pinnace is, that's one who leads in the war, one who was considered to be indestructible. He was a spiritual leader. He's a man who's not mentioned a lot about. He should be a lot more in the books. His wife, too. Think about when English got here, they did not mention a lot of native women, their names. And for us, the women are considered to be high in status. They're considered to be the givers of life. They're highly respected. But no names were given to these women, not many. Hoppemuck's wife, we know, had a large role in history. Massasoit, we know he arrived with the treaty. We know he came to that first harvest feast. We know he came to Governor Bradford's wedding. We know, yeah, Governor Bradford got remarried in 1623 in August, right? And when he got remarried, we know Massasoit was invited. Massasoit brought 6 score of men. If you guys know what a score is, that's 20. Yeah. So he brings 120 men to Bradford's wedding. He also brings 6 other leaders of different indigenous communities, Wampanoag communities. He brings his wife. He brings his boy. His oldest boy is Warm Sutter. We think it was Warm Sutter. He was probably about 10 or 11 years old. And you know, there's a lot of people from England here at that time for Governor Bradford's wedding. I can't recall his name, but one of the English people who weren't the colonists asked Massasoit if he could have his boy. Yeah, and Massasoit, no, you're not gonna have my boy, sorry. Yeah. So that was in 1623, right? Massasoit does not show up in the records from 1623 now until 1639. There's nothing really written about indigenous and colonist relations in that 16-year gap. It's weird. 1639, Massasoit shows up, brings this Warm Sutter, his older son, and reaffirms that treaty with the English. Okay. Massasoit dies in 1660, and we'll talk about probably old age, but we'll talk about who took over leadership. Now, you had a lot of things happening, right? This colonization happened. Colonization encompasses a lot of different things for our people. And the first part of colonization was placed on religion. And for our people, I'm not gonna say any religion's wrong or right. I'm not a person to do that. People believe what they believe because that's how they are. That's what they're raised. For us, though, Christianity was placed on us. And a lot of us took on Christianity. And I've heard this from native speakers from my community too. And they say native Christianity was good to us. And that might have been true, but if you're gonna say that, you have to say what happened to our people. You gotta mention that plague. Can you imagine all the medicine people we lost? So many people might have been looking for something to grab onto. But there are also a lot of traditionalists still living, right? But what was popping up a lot was a lot of preachers, right? Missionaries. You had the John Elliots. You had the John Cottonwoods. You had the Thomas Mayhews. You had the Richard Bournes around my community in Mashpee, and these were praying towns. But you go over to Martha's Vineyard, that's when you see a lot of things happening in the 1640s with the Mayhews. And there's a relative over there. His name was Coombs, who lived in a place which is called Eggertown now, right? Coombs, he knew the King James Bible so well that was preaching it to English people, their religion. But not everybody liked this, right? He was called, Coombs was called the Chappaquiddick by a native leader. And he told him, what are you doing? We have our own ways of doing things, and punched him in the face, you know? But like I said, right or wrong, that it was placed on us. A lot of people took it on. And I mentioned John Cottonwood. I'm gonna mention this for a reason. Because when he left the vineyard, he went to around the Plymouth area, Patuxent, and also dealt with the Heron Pond people, Manamet down there. And he mentioned right in his writings that Heron Pond, Manamet still had carried the tradition still and was strong in the traditions. So they want to take what he had to offer. But praying towns, the first one praying town we had, right, was in 1651. Was it Newton, I think. Natick. And that was produced by John Eliot. Think about praying towns. These were native people brought to these towns and taught Christianity, but they were placed all around the outskirts of Wampanoag country. And they were placed there for a reason. John Eliot did a lot of preaching, right? And Coombs, his son, was in Eliot's praying town. His name was Joel Coombs. And I'll talk about him in a minute. But what you're seeing right now, you live right down the road from this. This is the oldest meeting house in the United States. This is right in Mashpee, right now on Meeting House Road. This was built in 1684. Okay, and this is where our cemetery is too. And this is where we bury a lot of our folks there. So praying towns were big amongst our people, were brought there and taught Christianity. I'll go back to John Eliot, right? And when he was teaching Joel, Coombs' son, Christianity. You guys know Harvard University? Started out as an English and Native college, right? The first graduating class would have been in 1665. And we know at that time, there was 5 Native people who went to that class, was ready to graduate. Great Nipmuc, they left early from what I hear, and 2 Wampanoag people from Capwack, known as a Vineyard. Joel was from over there. Caleb, no, there's a book called Caleb's Crossing. And he's the only one that graduated in 1665 as a Native person, was Caleb. Okay, Joel did not. Joel was considered to be valedictorian, highly intelligent. Joel, 2 weeks before graduation, went home to the Vineyard, and on the way back, they stopped in Nantucket, and he got killed. And who killed him might have been his own people, because there was a lot of traditionalists still around at the time, right? But what Harvard did, they invited my family up there, and I think it was 2007 or 2009, and they gave us a posthumous degree in his name. So that's actually the degree I have right in my office, yeah. So that was, Harvard really ever does that, so that was pretty cool. So as the centuries were going by, right, as the decades were going by from 1620, there was a slow decline in relations. In 1675, war breaks out between the 2 people. Yeah, I mentioned 1660, Massasoit dying, and who took over leadership after Massasoit was Warm Sutter's oldest son. And Warm Sutter in 1662 was called to Duxbury, which is still part of Plymouth Colony. And they're asking Warm Sutter about what they call illegal land sales. What that means to Native person, I have no idea, because we don't believe in ownership. We believe nobody lives there, go there, and that's part of who you are. So Warm Sutter brought his boy out there with him. They asked him, they gave him something to eat and drink himself. Then he left. But they kept his boy, and he went home. On the way home, he died. And you guys good at math, so you have a good idea what happened to him by giving food and drink. Yeah, probably poisoned. And who took over leadership after him was his youngest brother, known as Metacomet. And by that time, Metacomet wasn't hearing much. He was really upset what was going on. Why there was so much decline between the relations? Land being one side believed in ownership, the other side did not. So you might see a Native person walk across an English person's, what they would call their backyard, and they'll say, hey, no, you can't be here no more. A Native person be like Wampanoag person be, what do you mean I can't be here? I don't understand that. There was laws favoring one side, not the other. There was, like I said, place on Christianity. Native people couldn't have guns. No, I didn't, like I said, this is what they wrote down themselves. I looked at Plymouth Colony laws. I looked at Mass Bay laws. I looked at it from 1630 to the 1690s. And that's all you have to do. This is all in digital format, right? You punch in Indian and everything's highlighted in the laws, right? The reason I was doing this research is I want to know when was our ceremonies being outlawed? I thought Plymouth Colony did it at first. Eventually they did, but it wasn't Plymouth Colony at first. It was actually Mass Bay, which is Boston. And I found that first law, and it quotes like this, it goes like this. November 4th, 1646, if any Indian is caught powwowing or celebrating to the false gods and devils on English lands, they shall be fined 10 pounds. I'm like, what does 10 pounds mean to a Native person? So I once again went back to my friend, an English scholar, like, what does that mean? He said 10 pounds for an Englishman, Darius, means a half a year's salary back then. Imagine what it meant for us. So what that meant for us, that one law being started, is we couldn't sing our songs, which is part of our ceremonies. We couldn't do our ceremonies. So we no longer have, we have some, but we lost a lot of our original songs. A lot of things have been gifted to us, but you guys can do your own research and look it up and check it out. Please check it out. It's one of the most fascinating research I've ever done. But you see the 1660s were really bad. 1671, Metacomet runs the Mashpee, said, can you help me? Plymouth Colony is putting leveling all these things against me. And Mashpee said, sure, we'll help you. And what they did, they got the big three, right? Governments of Mashpee, Plymouth Colony, and Connecticut government together in Plymouth and called Metacomet there in 1671 in June. And they said, well, we're actually not gonna help you. We're gonna say you have to do this, what your father said. And when they levied him with a lot of fines, you gotta give so many wolf heads, and wolf heads were a big thing back then because they were going after cattle. So nothing was happening positive for Native people. So 1675, flash forward a little bit. June 1675, the bloodiest war per capita in New England breaks out, known as the King Philip's War. King Philip is Metacomet, that's what they called him. So it breaks out by having John Sassaman being, John Sassaman was from a praying town. He went to the English and told him what Metacomet was doing, attacking the English. And John Sassaman did not have a good day afterwards. Got drowned in Assawamsa Pond by Metacomet and his men. Yeah, well, yeah, Assawamsa. So war breaks out. I'm not going to go into battles. There's a lot of battles. A lot of people lost their lives on both sides. 1675. Go forward to August 12th, 1676. There was an English captain named Benjamin Church looking for Metacomet, looking for King Philip, and they found him. He was led to him by a native guide. You believe that? Because native people thought they were doing the right thing. They're leading the English going against other native people. And they found Metacomet at his home in Mount Hope, known as Poconoket, Bristol. And then when they found Metacomet, they took his body apart limb by limb, took his head, brought it to Plymouth, put it on the post for 20 years. Well, hold on. Yeah, Metacomet has a wife. He has a boy. We can't kill him. That's what they said. That's not right. But what we can do is sell them off as slaves. And that's what happened. Slavery was a big thing after war. We were sold literally all around, down south through the Caribbeans. And the only silver lining I can say about slavery for our people is down in Bermuda, they know who they are as a people. You believe that? After all those centuries of being put down as slaves, they still have their cultural identity. They come up to Mashpee, to their powwow, and we go visit them. We rotate every other year down in Bermuda. Bermuda's a nice place to visit these days, right? Cape Cod is too. But yeah, they still have that cultural identity. But after war ended around here, it didn't end farther north. It went through 1678, you got northern Maine and New Hampshire, such, Vermont. War is nothing. If you lose the war, which we were, slavery was legal, scalping was legal, servitude was legal. I think on Cape Cod, you go through the 1800s even, I think 80% of the houses had native kids as servants houses. You go to 1742, those laws were placed, right? 1742, there was one law that was put in by Massachusetts. They say if you're a remnant of a tribe, that's what we were called, remnants at the time, remnants, you have to move to one of 4 locations. You got to move to Mashpee, which I'm from. You got to move to Aquina, which is the vineyard. You got to move to Heron Pond, or you got to move to Grafton. If you're Wampanoag person, you probably didn't go to Grafton because we knew that was Nipmuc country. So the rest were dispersed down there around those 3 other areas. Yeah. Ooh. Now, why is this in here? 1830 Indian Removal Act, known as by a lot of folks as the Trail of Tears. Known as not by my favorite president at all, Jackson, who put this act in effect. It wasn't just the Cherokee who were taken out west. It was a lot of indigenous people all along eastern borders, taken out to the west of Mississippi and to Canada and relocated for basically over land. And those people came to my area too. Those agents, there's a thing called the Morse Report. Check it out. When DC sent their agents out, they called it the Morse Report when they came around our area, MORSE report. And those people came around our area and were ready to relocate the Mashpee Wampanoag people away from our homeland. But there was a non-native overseer. I want to say Phineas Fish, but I'm not really sure. And he spoke up for the Wampanoag people. He said, if you take the Wampanoag people away from the homeland, they're gonna die. And the reason they're gonna die is they rely on seafood on their diet, which we do, but we can live without seafood. And they left us alone. That's why we're still here today. That's why we weren't relocated. Okay? That's very important. That's why I put that, because it's very important to mention. Mashpee, you guys probably seen the land of the Wampanoag, incorporated 1870. This is the same sign that's over Aquina, incorporated 1870. What that means to me was taken because now it's formed into a town. Oh, and guess what? Now it's formed into a town. You're given so many acres of your land back. But no, it's a town though. Now you're gonna be taxed on the land. And for us, we're not a wealthy people, right? And that's why we lost a lot of our land, because of taxes. Yeah. It's all strategic. You think about how everything was set up. Whaling, huge amongst our people. Whaling was done in the 19th and 18th century. We as Wampanoag people, we did whaling, and that's a machine right there. Long before thousands of years, we went for the smaller whales near shore. When high tide would come in, we would scare them with our paddles and get the small ones. But when we had these big whaling ships happening, we literally went all around the world. There's a very famous exhibit at our museum was put up for whaling, produced by Ramona Peters and Jason Mancini. It's awesome. We have it as a traveling exhibit through education now. And how it shows a global map, right? And it shows when that ship went out, who was on that ship, who was the captain, what was the name of the ship, and where they went, and if they came back. Because a lot of people did not come back. A lot of Native people stayed in port. Voluntarily sometimes not voluntarily. Some people were left in port. So it's literally Wampanoag people all around the world. But when the folks came back, right, they were looked highly upon in our government. They actually formed our government, the Mashpee Wampanoag government, back in the 1800s. Those people, and they were actually Wampanoag whalers Mashpee Wampanoag whalers who had their own whaling ships. That was a huge industry. It was a very easy exhibit to look at and read. You look at the red dots, you say, okay, 51. You look at that, you'll find 51, okay, name so ship, so captain, and these people went. I looked for my family, right? I found 2 which left and came back. One went to the west coast of South America, and one went to the Pacific, and they both came back alive. But there was mutinies on these ships. A lot of the ships sunk. So yeah, but whaling industry was a huge thing. That's my wife again. That's Tootie. And language is cool, right? It's cool to have your language, keep it as part of your culture. But early 1900s, if you weren't speaking English, for a lot of people, not just my people, you'll be made fun of, ridiculed. So what the parents told the kids, don't bother speaking your native tongues, because I don't want you going through what I went through when I was a kid. So that's when we slowly started losing our language, right? There's a woman from my community, her name being Jessie Little Beard, who won the MacArthur Award for Genius. Back in the 1990s, right? This is a true story. She was having dreams, right? She said people were coming to a dream speaking a different language, and it wasn't English. She said the faces looked like Mashpee Wampanoag, but did not know their names. So one dream, the people came in and spoke English to her. They said if the Wampanoag people had the choice to have the language back, would they say yes? So she went around the community members and asked, do we want to see our language spoken again? Of course, everybody said yes, that's part of your culture, that's part of who you are. So what she did, she went to MIT, graduated with a degree in linguistics, and started piecing the language back together again. How this was done, you had elders who could still speak some of the language. You had some of the language families you can take from. You had old records written in Wampanoag. That's the first thing we started learning is how to write. Our history has always been oral, always through stories, right? We all can read and write now, but even still today, a lot of people like to hear those oral stories. That's how people hold on to the information. But we wrote in Wampanoag, right? I'm going to ask you guys to check out the book Tears of Repentance, right? It was produced by John Eliot in 1653. What 1653 is when he was doing all the preaching missionary work, he was taking these native people and getting their confessions and what it meant to them of Christianity. It's called Tears of Repentance. And with this pamphlet he sent over London because he wanted more funding for his work. But if you read this book, you see the name of the people, native names, and what Christianity meant to these people. And they call it Tears of Repentance because you can see the teardrop stains in the book. Yeah. So records like that we took from, right? For language that Jesse took from. And started piecing language back together again. And now language is back. We have our Montessori school, which teaches kindergarten through 3rd grade now. We have fluent speakers, people speak at different levels. My wife there is a teacher. There's a documentary out, We Still Live Here, produced by Ann Makepeace. It shows the language project itself when it first starts out, so please check it out if you haven't. I gotta change the slide. I should show the building. This is where I work. It's a community building and government center. It's right down by South Cape Beach. And it's where our government is. This is where our chairs, our vice chair, our treasurer, our council, health, education, ICWA, elders, Indian Child Welfare Act, that's what ICWA means. Now, I'll talk about government real quick, what happened lately, in the last number of years for our people. You guys know about this. You guys live on Cape Cod. You guys read the papers and see the news, right? Our land and trust was challenged, right, by a certain government. And that land and trust, when it was challenged, it was taken out. And we came that far from losing our land and trust, that far. Our 291 acres, whatever it may be. 291 acres, yeah. And we fought back though, we fought back. We had our lawyers. And the people who took out, part of the government who took it out was the Department of Interior. And they said at the time, but you have to be under federal jurisdiction by 1934 to have land and trust. By 1934, right? So we knew this also, so we took him to court. And I remember doing yard work out in the yard. I was raking and all that, listening to this trial. And the judge was a very fair judge, right? And he asked, and we brought up you guys know the Carlisle School? You got what they call the Indian Wars in the 1800s. When those wars ended in the 1880s, say, the first boarding school, native boarding school was the Carlisle School, right? I'm going to go, sorry, I'm almost done. The Carlisle School. And that was made by William Pratt, right? And his famous slogan was kill the Indian and save the man, right? And native people were brought there from all around, and the haircut, couldn't speak the language. They had to wear a certain amount of clothing, wasn't their own clothing. Washed away from the culture. So we brought the Carlisle School, right? And the judge asked the Department of Interior's lawyers, do you know what that is? I remember the lawyer was sick. The Department of Interior did not answer. Judge was like, I'm gonna ask you again. Do you know what the Carlisle School is? Would not answer. And the judge's like, I know what you're doing. There's a reason she would not answer. If she answered in the right way, probably it would have been done. Because Mashpee Wampanoag people were taken to the Carlisle School in Pennsylvania. 1880s to the 1920s. And isn't that before 1934, which was under federal jurisdiction? Yeah. So you had that, you had the Morse report. A lot of things contributed. And what the judge said, you know what? I'm gonna come back and give you an answer soon. Hey, he didn't take long, that we can put our land back in trust. So it's stable right now. You guys been in our powwow, please come. July 4th weekend, 3 days. So we have over 10,000 guests during those 3 days. Bring your chair. Bring your appetite. Bring your moccasins, right? We invite you to dance and join into the songs and dances. But just to enjoy the culture, right? It's huge. It's over 100 years old. We have different certain specials too, special dances on the final day. One special is for my brother who got murdered back in '97, Melvin Coombs. And the thing about the special in this dance, Melvin was it was a championship dancer. He was awesome. Whole lot better than me. Whole lot. And his famous dance he would do was a crow hop. You ever seen a crow when he hops? So you have to imitate that crow. So what we do is we have the dancers come out and we ask them to imitate Melvin's dance, crow hop. Well, not Melvin's dance he loved. And they do. And we choose a winner or winners. And this year, who won? Actually, it was an Narragansett. That's John Thomas. He's a great dancer, though. He's awesome. So yeah, that's my story, guys. That's my presentation, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you. Went a little over, so I can take a few questions if you have, yeah.
What were your customs and traditions back then?
We don't get too much on ceremonies, you know. I can tell you we bury our dead in the ground. A lot of times facing southwest, that's tradition. A lot of times facing in a fetal position, because that's the way you came into Mother Earth and that's where you leave. But you got a lot of indigenous cultures who raise them, who bury them above ground. We don't, we bury still in ground. So yeah, we have certain practices we still do today. So like some things I can't get in detail about, but yeah. Yeah, yes.
Is it true that, there was a very complex trading system up and down the East Coast as far as South and South America?
Yeah, there's things that have been found all around that we didn't have here, right? You know, and it's not like we needed it, but it's good to have a lot of friendly trading going on and things get bounced down. You know, for us as North, Central, and South America, we're all considered to be one. You know, they have very similar things that we do that they do. Like that's where the corn originates down there. Corn beans originate down there. We always didn't have the corn and beans. We've only had that for I think close to 2,000 years, and that worked its way up. The squash from a squash blossom was made into a plant, which we produce for food. But yeah, we had intense trade routes. Like even gone to the Great Lakes, we got the copper from. Yeah, there's been certain stones still found around here, jaspis and certain types that are not originally from here. So yeah, how much do we travel back and forth? I don't know how much, but we have certain trade routes. Definitely. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm from so bear with me if my question is stupid.
It's not a stupid question. Right?
I'm thinking number one about the houses, okay, build them for the summer, you build.
One for the fall and winter, yeah.
Yeah. Do you go back to that one?
That's a
Are
good
they
question.
yours?
You go back to the same spring and summer place long as Mother Earth can support you. If one year you saw the planting not coming up as well as the year before, you move on. And when I say move on, it might be right over there. You got to let that land rest. When it came to winter and fall communities, you go back to the same area, same idea until Mother Earth wouldn't support that area. Once you start to see the animals not coming around as much, once you start to see the deadfall not being there for firewood, and that might be 20, 30 years down the line, you know, but you don't move too far away. We all know where Wampanoag Country is, so. But like I said, there's, one thing I want to say, you hear a lot about Massasoit, right? A lot about Massasoit, and that's what the English wrote about. His original name was Usumiquin. That's his name. Massasoit's a title. Usumiquin means yellow feather. There's always that debate, well, how much power did Massasoit Usumiquin have? We do know he was written a lot about. That's what they made the treaty with. Well, out of those like 69 odd other communities, we know the leaders, the names. We know the names of the community they led. And we know the interactions they had with Europeans prior. So we know the combatants, right, down in Kamiku, we know the INLs, right? We know the names at the time. We know the Weedamos, our chances. They're women leaders too, so are. Yes,
The place where you worked in Mashpee, is that a museum too?
now outside of Government Center, you know, we have a museum right on 130. If you know where our herring run is, it's a house. And we have a new exhibit in the Whalen Museum exhibit's been taken out, but we have a different one in there now. But people has to open up in the spring. You're welcome to come down. We have a WeQ house there, a boat there, and you can go inside and check out the herring run. Probably come during the springtime. That's when herring start to run in late April. Yeah, check it out. We are building. We got a grant, and we are going to build a place called a native community, native village, that dates back pre-contact, which we had down 12 acres by Mashpee Pond, Wakeby Lake. But when the land suit happened back in '76, there was a lot of tension. And that area got wrecked and a lot of people got arrested, known as the Mashpee 9. So we're looking to get that land back from the town and even work with the town and rebuild that. And it's gonna be a teaching tool, not just for our people, which we're gonna teach our people, our youth, that's the idea, but also school districts that serve our youth. What is that?
Sharon, we got historical site. King Philip's Rock.
Mm-hmm. I think I've been out there, yeah. Sharon, Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of places he went. He went around, he got up. The King, if you know that Brown University on Rhode Island, you got the Heffenreffer Museum out there, you got King Philip's throne, which it's really cool. It's carved into a stone cliff wall. It's actually a huge throne seat that he actually sat with his council and met. I've been out there, so yeah. There's different rock formations all around that mean a lot to our people still today. Yeah. Yeah.
How do I begin to associate myself with
Yeah, it's tough because times were tough. You know, normally I'm gonna say you got to look at the town records, the birth records, and you have to trace back your genealogy. Keep on going back generation by generation. And because a lot of us were looked down upon, you know, and so a lot of these birth records don't say if you're a native or non-native, but people through oral history know who they are. And that's the best way I can suggest it, you know. But it's tough. Down there, you got all different nations of people.
anywhere here where I find chapter from native
I can talk to you actually. Yeah, I might give her a little busier than she is. We have enrollment in our government center enrollment, right? And Rita Gonzalez, she's our director. Just call our government center and it'll bring you to, okay, number 7, this is enrollment or whatever. Just press 7 and bring it right to our line. And ask her. Lena Lopez, yeah, I got Gonzalez, yeah, Lopez, Rita Lopez. Gonzalez is another one we have. Wampanoag. Rita Lopez. Healthcare, yeah, IHS. Rita Lopez, yes. Rita, watch it, I'm sorry. Yes.
Are you seeing in today's world more of a younger generation moving away from the traditions?
No, I think I see the opposite now because there was a gap there, in my opinion, that people lean away. But you know, we have through education other avenues that we're working with the youth, and that's like I was at the museum in Plymouth for a number of years, 30 odd years, whatever. And the reason I came amongst my people, I was always amongst my people. I want to work right directly with the youth, and I have that opportunity now. I'm right in the school system. I'm right in Casey Coombs, which is pre-K through 3rd grade. I'm right in Quasha Elementary from 3rd grade to 6th grade. And I get it, you have to get them when they're young. You know, for us, there's a lot of trauma is true. It's real. And for our people, there's a lot of things that happen to our people and still happening. And what my job is to be a mentor, to encourage these youth and be proud of who they are. And I tell people, folks, you gotta be proud of whatever you are. But as Wampanoag youth, the first thing I encountered when I was going into schools a few years ago was there's a lot of stuff that went on. And I'm relaying that back to myself too. And I started something, it's been done before, but something called Tribal Boys last year, which I got these group of boys. I had about 8 of them from grade 3 through 6. And out of those 8 boys, only 1 boy had a mother and father at home. And there's different reasons for that. Unfortunately, drugs is crossed and there's no culture border for that. You know, it's a lot of things that it's a whole different talk right now to get into. But a lot of historical trauma is going on amongst this youth. But my job is to instill confidence, be proud of who you are, be respectful, walk with honor, being young. Now, this year I got a new group of boys. And yesterday we walked into that government center and we met my director, Roxanne Mills, and they introduced themselves in Wampanoag, and it made me cry almost, you know. Roxanne was very proud of that.